This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show.
Let's do this.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 122. And tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
And Thalen.
Hey.
And Tam is not with us this week because he's doing like Paxy type stuff, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, something at least vaguely related to Pax West. Or the Pax formerly known as Prime. Have you actually gone yet, Kodra?
So I went to a lunch meetup this afternoon with Lior and some other folks. Paragon was there, and one of Chestnut's co-hosts from their WildStar blog was there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
It was fun, and it was really funny because my wife went along with us, and she was very shocked to meet somebody who actually listens to this.
Really?
Yes, that was weird for her.
Yeah, it's okay. Admittedly, I realize we have listeners, but it's always weird to hear that someone actually listened to an episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not used to that. I'm also not used to people reading my blog. I'm not used to that being a thing. So.
I mean, that's definitely more of a thing.
Yeah, it's weird to me, that anyone is actually listening.
Yeah.
But anyway. And you guys are, going back Sunday, I think?
Tomorrow and Monday.
Cool. I have not really followed anything coming out of PAX this week, but I assume I will catch up on stuff.
I'm sure we'll talk about it next week.
Cool. So, another big happening this week is the launch of World of Warcraft Legion. And I know myself and Grace and Ash have been playing.
Yep.
And it has gone remarkably smoothly, in spite of a fairly active DDoS campaign going on.
I mean, that's pretty much assumed at this point.
Which is sad, but they've... Other than a few weird little hiccups, there was one night where we were already winding down for the evening because, realistically, Ash and I needed to go to bed. And at that point, we all got disconnected. So we just, okay, we'll go to bed now. But other than that, there's maybe been a little bit of loot lag here and there. But mostly it's been pretty smooth. Have Ash, Grace, you guys experienced much in the way of weird hiccups?
There was the night that you mentioned where we all kind of said, it's bedtime anyway. And then there's at least one other instance where things were getting bad. And I've had a couple of hiccups. There's one zone that starts off with a scenario, and both times that I've tried to start it, it's taken a couple tries to get it to actually start properly. But other than that, nothing too weird.
I am really happy with this expansion so far, and it kind of scares me a little bit. The leveling content is really good, and I don't know if it's just that. Well, so I know the content itself is good, but I'm also really enjoying, the class I'm playing, which is Fury Warrior. So I'm not sure how much of that is, just that the content is that great, or how much I'm really just enjoying running around and hitting things with two large swords.
Maybe a little bit of both. I will say the class changes they made for this expansion were much larger and more sweeping than any previous one. And I think the game is probably better off for it.
Well, it definitely seemed to freshen up a lot of classes and make various specs have more of a purpose as so they really did a lot of differentiating between these abilities are now arms abilities, these abilities are fury, these abilities are protection. And while there is some overlap, there's not that much overlap.
And there's classes like Warlocks where there is the only ability they all have is Drain Life.
Yeah. And
Fear.
Well, in a lot of cases, they gave them unique versions of a spell, but it does something specific for that tree. Like, instead of, God, what's the soul?
Shadowbolt?
Yeah, Shadowbolt. Like, they all have their own version of Shadowbolt.
Not really, actually. Like, Affliction doesn't even have a Shadowbolt replacement. Just straight gone.
So it's just Drain
They use
Life,
Drain
just
Life
the...
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
So they've basically, gotten to that point where the different specs are almost entirely different classes.
Yeah, that's really the case. Is it's essentially there are 36 different classes.
Yeah, they've kind of been headed that way for a while.
Well, not
now,
36,
so.
but 35. There's
Yes,
only
36.
Yeah,
36.
one of them
Oh,
has
I
4.
guess. Yeah, one of them has 4.
which one only
kind
has
of been-
2?
Demon Hunter.
Ah,
They only added 1 DPS and 1 tank spec for it. Because I guess trying to come up with 2 different DPS specs was maybe a little challenging.
so have they figured out how to do Rogue? Like, is Rogue interesting and differentiated and well designed?
I
But
have
there's
not
someone who
touched
plays
mine.
a rogue.
Like I've not played Subtlety or Assassination, but as I understand it, those are 2 vastly different specs now. I play Outlaw. Outlaw is a pirate. I have a sword and I have a gun, and well, actually, it's technically 2 swords, but
So
like you
swords.
have ranged attacks as Outlaw, and it is very much the I want to play. God, what's the
Corsair.
Bilgewater pirate from League?
Oh, Gangplank.
Yeah, you're basically Gangplank.
Please tell me that Outlaw has either an ability or a talent or something called Stand and Deliver.
No.
What is Blizzard thinking?
They
Interesting.
basically replaced all of the rogue abilities that they used to have with more pirate themed ones.
So
Yeah.
they got
Eviscerate became run through.
So they got rid of combat.
Yeah, combat is no more. Combat is now Outlaw.
Got it.
And they have a weird mechanic called Roll the Bones, which is you basically roll these giant dice and you get buffs. But the buffs are, like, they're all universally good buffs, but if you're really lucky, you can get, like, 3 of them at the same time.
So wait, this is the Setzer spec?
Basically, to some extent.
Can you have an
FF11's
airship?
Corsair. It's really it is.
It's fun as hell.
That's interesting, and like I used to be a combat rogue way back when I used to play a rogue, but
Basically, they took Slice and Dice out and replaced it with this.
okay, this doesn't necessarily sound like what I would envision my character being. I'd probably have to figure out assassination or subtlety, but like
Probably. Like, they decided the whole in-your-face rogue thing didn't really make much sense with its original flavoring.
Yeah, so basically, as it stands with Outlaw, you basically hit your melee ability, and then you'll get procs of a free shot, or you can just use your range shot if you can't get in close. But it's like 40 energy per hit, I think. I mean, so it's an expensive ability. Like, but for somebody like me, it feels great. It is the least roguey spec ever. I need to spend some time playing Subtlety and Assassination just to know what they play like now.
Assassination didn't think changed much. What they, however, did is still the stealth spec.
Well, I don't know what, like, the thing that I don't know is Combat, aka Outlaw, got to keep the I want to warp around the map and hit a bunch of mobs ability. I don't know what the other rogue specs have instead.
Subtlety still has Shadow Step, like, I think is part of its
So step behind.
yeah. They have some. I think they have multiple of those now. Actually, I need to check.
Then there's, like, Hunter is all really different feeling specs. You've got survival.
There's 3 entirely new classes.
Yeah, you have survival the melee hunter, which is amazing. It's truly
is
amazing.
Not what Hunter has traditionally been.
It's what I tried to make Hunter back in vanilla. And for me, it is amazing. It's that class I always tried to play. And more so, it's amazing because it's a melee class with a pet. Marksman is kind of the traditional.
Marksman is the closest to traditional.
Yeah. I mean, it's significantly different. And they went back on, like, early in beta, Marksman just lost its pet entirely. And they went back on that and gave the option to do Lone Wolf, and I don't know why you would ever choose Lone Wolf, but
If you hate having a pet for some reason.
yeah, I guess. And then Beast Mastery is weird.
I like Beast Mastery, but it's really weird now.
Yeah, it feels very strange now. I haven't actually tried it since the expansion launched, just in the pre-patch, and I wasn't super happy with it, but I'm hoping that it feels a little better once you start getting some of your artifact stuff.
Because Beast Mastery basically has 2 permanent pets, right?
Yes, your artifact ability is not active. It gives you another pet. So you have 2 pets all the time, and one of their artifact talents causes your second pet to also get all the various benefits you get from your abilities. Like it'll join in Kill Command, it'll join in Bestial Wrath, which means that a whole lot of the damage for Beast Mastery Hunters got loaded onto the pets, which is why it's not real great. Wasn't real great to play in the pre-patch.
Interesting.
It's going to be interesting how that does in like raid situations where sometimes pets don't work as well.
Well, and especially since from what I've experienced in the pre-patch and from what people have been complaining, that your pet as Beast Mastery is a lot more fragile than hunters are used to them being.
The loss of Spirit Bond really hurts for Beast Mastery.
Ooh, yeah, that would.
Is that something you can get back by speccing into the artifact weapon?
The artifact weapon has an ability called Spirit Bond, which causes Kill Command to heal you. I don't know if it also heals your pet, but sure hope it does.
Yeah, the loss of Spirit Bond sounds like a horrible idea. I didn't realize it went away.
The passive health regen did a lot to keep your pet alive.
Did a lot to keep me alive, too.
Other specs seeing massive changes include Balance Druid, which is now based on earning and spending astral power rather than its old Eclipse mechanic, which is mostly a good thing, because the Eclipse mechanic was never really all that great. And they have, by far, my favorite artifact ability so far.
What's that?
They can drop the moon on your enemies.
Wait, who?
Okay.
Balance Druid.
Well,
You get a spell called New Moon that just shoots a little moon-like projectile. Then once you cast it, it turns into Half Moon. You cast that, which is a bigger projectile, it turns into Full Moon. Full Moon is a meteor-style ability that splits damage between everything it hits that just drops the moon on people. Against single targets, it frequently one-shots them on a crit.
That's kind of amazing. At this point, I've done all 3 of the warrior artifact quests, and I've done the Retribution Paladin quest. And they've all been really freaking cool.
I have been surprised, actually, at the various class halls that I've seen. Having seen the Warlock, Hunter, and Druid ones by now.
In what way?
They put a lot more effort into them than I anticipated. Basically.
They're pretty great. I mean, I think there are definitely some that are hands down better than others. I know the mage one is I'm pretty in love with it. Like, I can't imagine how it could be any more appropriately magey, and it feels neutral enough also. Like some of the other ones, like the priest one is pretty neat, but it feels very Draenei. And like I did it on the beta on my horde like undead priest, and it felt a little odd.
The warrior one feels super neutral as well. Like, it's Valhalla. You literally go to Valhalla.
Seeing warriors jump out of that onto the landing platform in Dalaran is really funny.
Yeah, like you literally get to your class hall by doing the Superman thing and pushing down off the ground and leaping into the sky. And you leap up to Valhalla. And you like land on this platform, and you're up there with all these Valkyr and other, Valkor whatever aspirants, and your class hall master is Odin. It is the most warrior thing ever. Like they nailed it. Like this is what a warrior is.
Yeah, and the mage hall is like, it's perfectly magey with arcane stuff everywhere and books, and it's basically like being at Hogwarts, and it's great.
Well, and honestly, like what makes these work so much better than the Garrison is the Garrison
There
was
are
like
other
this,
people.
Yeah, like the Garrison was this pocket dimension that you go into and you never see anyone. This one, like, you're constantly seeing other people that play your class. Like, I am forever seeing Tiergan and waving at him as we pass each other in the class hall. Like I was hanging out the other night with Wargallow up there. I apparently totally missed running past GU a couple times, and he doesn't like that. But like you're up there with just people of your class, and it's kind of cool.
Which leads into something else. Since these are class-based, they are for both Alliance and Horde, which makes the continuing story seem really stupid.
Yep.
You're hanging out with all the Horde warriors and Alliance warriors.
Yep.
Supposedly you should be trying to kill half of them, but you don't, because
that's not the story of the game.
Well, God,
the writing in this game has the Diablo problem. I'm going to refer to it as Diablo problem because that's the first game we noticed it in, but it's really not the only game with it. Main story's writing is awful. Like, I'm not sure where they're going. I'm not sure if they know where they're going. And it's really unfortunate, and the result is kind of a mess. However, a lot of the side content is written excellently. Like, even all the various class hall stories are interesting, and some other stuff happens that is significantly more interesting than the whole Alliance Horde war storyline.
I mean, certainly the entire time that I was playing, the Alliance Horde war stuff that happened was pretty much always the least interesting thing.
So, there is a main story quest, though. Like, is it a main story quest in the same vein as, like...
The 14, no.
Okay. Is it a series of quests you can just skip?
Can't really skip them because the expansion structure forces you to... highly suggests that you do most of them.
Yeah, you have to do, like, the main story of each zone to unlock basically what becomes the dailies at level cap. The world quests require that you have at least, like, friendly or something reputation with all of the factions and all of the zones.
Which you hit really easily.
Yes, but you have to do it.
And honestly, like, the best part about these zones is, like, there are 5, 6, 7 different little sub-stories that are happening there. And each one of those is super interesting. Like, there's a Pokemon section that plays out totally different than most Pokemon sections because you're the Pokemon.
Okay.
Like, there's Ghost Hogwarts. There's... more, Dragonflight stuff, because apparently, no, that stuff really didn't end, and they saw better about themselves than to let it just die there.
Like, you're gonna have to elaborate. What happened with the Dragonflights?
Okay, so after...
They still exist?
Yeah, so, okay, well, actually, this is a spoiler territory, but at the end of Cataclysm, at... God, what was the Deathwing dungeon? Dragon Soul. Like, there's this whole thing where the Dragonflights have decided that, we can take care of Azeroth, and they're just going to fade off into the distance.
Yeah, they basically, like, give up their roles as shepherds of the mortal races.
Weird, okay.
And, yeah.
Which is a horrible idea, but... But that's the direction they decided to take that story, and whatever, that's a thing. But no, really, the Dragonflights are still here.
Wait, so I'm curious, does that mean that at some point they had to resolve, like, I don't know, there was lots of problems with the Dragonflights, like, did they ever resolve the Emerald Dream or the Shadow Dragonflight?
Kind of.
Emerald Dream storyline kind of continued through, it picks up a lot in this expansion.
Right.
Especially in the Druid class hall.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's not a spoiler to say that, like, there is a raid.
That's fair.
Like, that's pretty
the Emerald Nightmare is one of the raids.
Honestly, like, that's the thing with this expansion, it is basically the expansion of tying up some shit. Like, they're picking up...
They recognize that the old world actually still exists, except for Ravenfall.
Well, and they're taking, like... content from past expansions and expanding upon it. Like, one of the forces that you encountered in Northrend was the Kavaldir, which were basically the seaborn undead Vrykul.
Oh, yeah.
That you, like, were in one zone and only tangentially in another zone.
Yeah.
But nothing ever came of them.
Yeah,
well,
they
in
were
this
just
expansion,
these
you
mist
totally
dudes that
find
turned
out.
into seaweed.
Right, like this expansion, you totally find out what they are, where they come from, and more importantly, who's pulling their strings.
Man, it only took how many years to
Right,
get around
right.
to that?
Well, okay, so
8.
we've seen them in Borean Tundra and Howling Fjord, and that was all of Northrend that we saw them.
We're also
Then
in right off the
Vashir.
coast of the right off the coast of the
Argent
Argent
tournament.
tournament.
Okay. Well, they're also in Vashir during the whole Battle Maiden sequence where you are a Naga.
Right.
I totally forgot. I blanked that out of my memory. I think that entire zone, I guess.
But like that's basically the force that are fighting the Naga are the Kavaldir. So that's just like an example of a thread that has been picked up that was largely forgot about, and now we're learning new stuff about them. And it feels like there's a lot of these happening where, oh yeah, why didn't we ever continue that? Like in Dalaran, there is a portal to Wormrest Temple. Maybe some of those portals underneath are going to actually get use again. You know, since there are, 3 portals that never went anywhere?
Yeah, because there's one for each dragonflight, and we only ever went into 2 of them.
Are they bringing back, what was the time-eating dragonflight?
Infinite Dragonflight.
What is it?
The Infinite
Yes.
Dragonflight?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did those guys ever get their plot line resolved?
They were involved in the Dragon Soul.
Yeah, they're involved at the end of Cataclysm.
Yeah, I mean, they did at least continue it and verify what everybody already knew.
Which is Nosdormu was the leader of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
They did finally come out and tell us that. Like, was...
The thing that they basically came out and said during Wrath, except not really.
I absolutely expect us to see more of them this expansion because, once again, New Dalaran has a fresh, brand new portal to Caverns of Time.
Oh, I mean, so were they involved in Warlords of Draenor at all? Considering that was, all time travel wackiness?
No, I don't think so. Like they were.
Huh.
That was all Cho doing his storytelling stuff because his magical storytelling can send us back in time, sort of thing.
Oh, is that how it worked? Okay.
Yeah, it was like his storytelling.
Grief.
You're sort of confirming that my decision to skip the last expansion was not a bad one.
Oh no. Like Pandaria was madness. I was not a huge fan of it. Like there's some cool stuff about it, but I absolutely get people wanting to skip it.
Pandaria or Warlords?
Pandaria.
Both of them.
Okay.
Well, yeah, Warlords was the last one.
Honestly, like that's speaking of Warlords. My only reservation is that I'm 106 level and I've not seen anything even vaguely close to the end game right now. Warlords was really fun to level through.
Yeah,
But
this is my concern. Like I just hit level 110 today. I have not actually done really anything since then, except switch to a different character and start leveling that. But yeah, I mean, Warlords was great for leveling. Like when it came out, it was actually surprisingly fun to play through. But I believe that I'm having more fun now than I did in Warlords. This game feels very different from how WoW felt at the beginning of the last expansion, for sure. And I'm just hoping that 6 months from now, it still feels good instead of me being ready to quit again for a year.
well, okay, for me, the big thing is when we talked about the launch of Warlords, and you were not on the podcast at that point, Grace, but Tam, during the course of that podcast episode, Tam said, okay, Belle, sell me on Warlords. Like, why should I care about this game? And the truth was, I didn't have a lot to say about it. Like, you either you're feeling the nostalgia and interested in coming back, or you're not. Like, I didn't have a lot of positives to say. Like, it's more of the same. Like, it's good, but it's largely more of what you expect from World of Warcraft. And I guess this time around, I feel like I maybe have things to sell. Like, there are things that the game is doing right now that it's never done. And there are things that it's done with these class changes that put the game in a much better position than it's been ever.
It definitely feels a lot more modern. It doesn't have quite all of the bells and whistles that I would like from a new game, but it feels a lot more sleek and clean and playable than it ever has before.
Well, I think a big part of it is like this is not true for all specs, but most specs can be like torn down to a single hotbar worth of abilities.
Ooh,
That's nice.
Yeah, so like you don't have like there are in cases where you've got some extra abilities, but for the most part, the bulk of your core abilities could be thrown on a single hotbar, and that's it. Like I could actually see somebody playing without a hotbar mod, whereas what?
I've never used a hotbar mod.
Oh, see, I always have. Like I hated their hotbars. I hated the extra ones built in.
Thing I used to do, and I'm not currently doing, is I used to macro my abilities into multiple things on one button. And now I don't have to do that anymore because, well, the abilities I would have macroed them to are rolled in.
Yeah.
Like, there was a druid opener called Pounce that was a stun and a bleed. Now the ability you have that is a normal bleed just stuns if you use it from stealth.
Yeah, they've done that in a lot of cases where they had two abilities that were situationally good. They've just turned them into the same ability. Like, you just have this one ability now, and it's good all the time.
And it just has different effects depending on the varied situation.
Yes, like there are a lot of cases, like Ash just said, of this one thing is usable in a couple different ways. I have some macroed stuff, but it's mostly like I have 2 cooldowns that I want to keep up all the time, so I just put them on any other ability. There isn't a lot of stuff that is off global cooldown, so you can't really macro much anymore. The other big change, and I think we talked about this at one point, is that for the most part, buffs are gone.
Unless you're a paladin, buffs are entirely gone.
Yeah, like there are no more group buffs other than paladin, and paladins can maintain 3 buffs, period. They could either all be on the same target, or they could be on 3 different targets, but that's it.
Paladin, you get 3 single target buffs. That's it.
Crazy.
So the cool thing about that is there's no more, at least when it comes to rating, there's no more, oh shit, how are we going to get X buff out of this comp? Which, there's no more needing that weird ability that hunters had where they could like
Hunters can
deliver
supply any buff.
Yeah, bring any buff that you're missing. Which that's honestly what made Lone Wolf superior for rating for a period of time, is because instead of having to have a pet, they just had like a hotbar that allowed them to cast any given buff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, no, they could just choose which one they were running instead of running a pet.
But there's been a lot of other like quality of life stuff, like for in most cases mobs are multi-tab, so lots of, like, I think up to 5 people for a normal like quest mob can tag the same mob and still get XP and credit and not have to fight each other, except because I don't know what goes through Blizzard's brain sometimes, they still restrict it by faction.
Yeah, that one just is so weird to me.
Like, I think raid level bosses maybe don't, but like normal quest mobs, why? I don't know. Blizzard, why?
It's very important that you hate the people with the other color.
No, it just makes me hate Blizzard.
That's what I said.
Like, it doesn't make me hate the other faction. Like, I like my faction. I am playing the faction I don't like because my friends are there, but the whole thing just makes me hate Blizzard. Like, why did you do this? It's just annoying.
Yep.
Well, and honestly, what I end up doing is, like, I just help anybody out. I don't really care so much that I'm going to get credit, so I'm constantly ping-ponging between mobs that are mine and mobs that aren't mine, and I kill a lot of mobs.
Your class is encouraging you to do this in all the wrong ways.
It absolutely is. Like, Fury is the most swing big swords at everything you can class ever.
So, did they figure out how to make Fury work and not be overpowered as soon as you get a little bit of gear?
So that hasn't been true for a while because you no longer generate rage based on damage dealt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the big fix.
Rage is based on, like, it is generated based on your attacks, essentially.
So, like, haste gets you more damage doesn't get you more.
I still feel like that is a resource that scales with gear and is a problem.
Except it's not a problem because, like, energy also scales with haste directly.
Right.
Oh, does it now?
Yes.
Yeah. And there are a lot more classes that have a built-in combo mechanic type thing going on. I mean, it's not exactly a combo point, but like there's a lot of classes that have, you're building a resource, you're building a secondary resource, and then you go and spend it with something else.
Retribution Paladins still have their holy combo points, which even now actually build to 5.
Even though you only really need 3.
Even though you only spend 3 at once, yes.
Well, it's nice to be able to save up a couple extra.
Yeah, and like rogues finally build combo points on a personal level instead of on a target level. So that's a good change.
That is a good change.
That's been around for a little bit longer than this release, though.
Right, but neither Thalen or Kodra have played in a long time.
Right,
well,
but
it was still
not
personal in Mists, so it may have been a Draenor change.
Yeah, I think it was a Draenor change.
I guess the big thing for me is, like, now that I have 12 100s, I feel like there is a very specific reason to play each and every one of them. I don't feel like I'm just playing, like, that my druid is just an inferior version of a rogue, or, you know, that my rep paladin is just a not quite as good, you know, fury warrior. Like, they all have very specific things going on, and they're all doing some interesting things with the mechanics. Because I guess more than anything, this has been an expansion of class identity and spec identity. Now, unfortunately, in some cases,
decide between the various specs of my class.
Unfortunately, in some of these cases, like, the identity that they chose isn't the one that players really wanted.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem.
Because I know, like, Grace, you're having trouble with, like, Disc Priest.
Yeah, I mean, Disc Priest is a funny beast because it's a weird class fantasy to begin with. It's a little bit marginal, and it's fluctuated a lot over the years. And so this expansion, they've definitely taken it like 90% towards this is the healer that heals by dealing damage, and mostly put the brakes on this is a healer that shields people. I mean, it still has shields and it still uses, you know, powered shield and powered barrier and things, but the main healing is this, you know, you heal by dealing damage and you're sort of balancing between holy and shadow somehow and using that to heal.
From a balance perspective, the concept of a healer that heals by using shields is significantly more powerful than a healer who can just restore health.
Yeah, but I mean, from a balance perspective, a healer that heals by dealing damage is, you know,
hard.
Potentially, A, it's hard, and B, it's potentially way more useful to a raid if depending on how they're balanced. So it's, you know, it's tricky. Like, I appreciate that
yeah,
like, for
they're in a hard place.
It's really tricky, but and when I played my Disc Priest, I really enjoyed it in raids. Like, I raided some LFR and, you know, tried out the spec, and it was really, really fun. But in smaller group content, in a dungeon with only 5 people, it was just like things never stayed alive long enough to establish, you know, the like getting atonement on everybody and then damaging something to heal them, and you know, you're stuck using some of your other healing spells which aren't as great. It was challenging and not fun. Like, it was challenging in a frustrating, like, why do I have to do this way, and not in a this is, you know, difficult and fun, challenging to heal way. So that was pretty much why I'm not leveling my priest right now. And when I do level my priest, it will probably be shadow, because holy is boring. But Mage is incredibly fun. Like, I played Arcane Mage after the patch a bunch, and I have been leveling as Fire and slowly getting used to it, and that's been really fun. And I did all of the weapon quests, and Frost weapon quest was the most magey weapon quest possible, where you're like looking things up in books and then tracking them down, and it was a lot of fun.
I think the only real disappointment that I keep hearing from a few people is like for Serial Altus, there are situations where the super intricate artifact weapon quests are shared by multiple classes.
Yes, and this was another issue that I had with the Disc Priest, because they share their weapon quest with Arcane Mage, and having done it on both classes, it to me feels 100% like this was an Arcane Mage quest that they couldn't figure out what to do or didn't have enough time to finish the Discipline Priest, and they just duplicated it there because, and I'm not going to fully spoil it, but just a little bit of the gist of it is you're going to the Nexus where the blue dragons hang out and do stuff, and hang out with a blue dragon, and boy, that doesn't really feel like a priest thing to me.
No, it doesn't.
And it's frustrating and it's sad because the ones when they really do resonate for the class, they're really fun and interesting. Like, I really enjoyed all of the mage ones. Even though I had already done the arcane mage one on my priest, because it felt much more appropriate on the arcane mage.
The other one that I've heard about was that the Arms Warrior and Shadow Priest apparently share a quest. Because
that's a weird pairing.
Well, they've made it so, okay, so you have to understand, they've made it so Shadow Priest now draw their power from the old gods instead of the light.
Right.
So like all shadow comes from the old gods in one way or another. And essentially it's a quest chain involving an old god of sorts, or at least a minion. But it is weird that like Arms Warrior and Shadow Priest would ever share a quest. The other thing that's really cool is that the artifact weapons all have like some hidden ability. Like
these are hidden better than others.
Yeah, like so. Okay, with my Fury swords, there is an ability that any blow. I don't know what the internal cooldown on this is either. Basically, any blow that would kill me, a Valkyr shows up. And like golden flying Valkyr shows up like above me and prevents my death, and if I can kill the mob in 8 seconds, I'll get healed back up. But if I can't, I just die like normal. The arms weapon, for example, is like it's some famous weapon that was, used in the Arathi clans versus trolls war. So anytime you're around trolls in like an instance or overworld zone, there's apparently a chance that they'll run away from the sword.
Huh.
So I don't know like what the other ones are. I don't know what like the proc shield is. It's never procced for me.
The Fire Mage one will basically, the corpses of your enemies will continue to burn.
Hooray.
That seems fitting somehow.
Burn all the things.
Pearl Druid increases your movement speed as you kill beasts.
That's kind of awesome.
I have no idea what the Guardian one is.
So the other weird thing about this expansion is, like, I said this on my blog, but this is essentially the expansion that retail forgot.
What do you mean?
Oh, why would they care about retail? I mean, everybody's going to buy it digitally, right?
Yeah, retail is dead.
Okay, today was the first day I saw any copies of the game in the wild.
Regular or collectors?
Regular, just regular, period. I've not seen any collector's editions, but like I was at a Target and I saw the first copy of Legion that I've seen at all since this released. And I've been to a lot of stores since it was released. So I guess, I mean, that tells you the shift to digital, I guess. But like I remember, past expansions, there were always big displays at stores. And that just doesn't exist anymore.
To me, doesn't have a PC games section.
Well, of course not. Used PC games aren't really a thing. There's like DRM and stuff.
But like Walmart and Target still have PC games, and like when Overwatch came out, for example, they had displays of Overwatch. So I don't know, it's just weird to me, like this just hasn't really been in retail. And I guess it's just the difference a decade makes. Because like I remember going out at midnight at our Walmart, and they had this massive display of World of Warcraft.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure 10 years ago, Steam was still widely loathed and hated as that thing that you had to install to be able to play Half-Life 2.
Yeah. It's just weird how... Yeah. It's just weird how long, or like how far things have come in like a decade.
And by 10 years ago, Steam was tolerable. 2007 was the first time I actually bought a game from Steam.
Yeah, I think it was like 2008 for me.
Yeah, 2007, 2008 was probably when I actually started using it.
I mean, I didn't install Steam until 2007 because it was when I picked up the Orange Box.
Yeah, that would have been it for me.
And I didn't really start buying stuff on Steam for another year or two after that. Like, I was very anti-digital games for quite a while.
There was a rhythm game I saw that looked interesting, and it was only available on Steam, so I installed Steam and bought it. And then, then the years between then and now happened.
Yep. and then I realized that, it's nice to not have to, like, dedicate actual physical space to, game boxes and things. And to not have to go to the store to buy them.
That's the big thing. Like, this is actually the first WoW expansion since Wrath of the Lich King that I bought a physical copy for myself. Only because I still didn't have to go to the store to get it. I did pre-order it from Amazon because it was significantly cheaper that way. And luckily I didn't get the collector's edition, so it actually got here on time.
That was some madness going on. Like, for the poor people who ordered the collector's edition off Amazon, some of them got it just fine. Other people got a note saying it was being rescheduled for September 29th.
Oh, man.
And they got that note the
day of.
Yeah, it wasn't like they had any warning or anything.
That's awful.
Yeah, I mean, I had ordered mine from Amazon, normal box, and I was waiting for it to arrive like it was supposed to, and I started seeing all of these people with their horror stories, and I flipped out. And luckily, actually, and then I was really concerned because my spouse got home and said, well, there's no package, and I really flipped out, but it turns out that it was in the mailbox, not in front of the door, and everything was fine. But I can't imagine, like, I could see people freaking out and being incredibly unhappy on social media about that whole debacle, and I can't imagine being excited to play this game and just, nope, you don't get to play.
Well,
and Blizzard's weird, I don't know, their idea of accommodating people who wanted to have the digital edition so that they could do things like play the Demon Hunter early and still get the collector's edition was, well, you just buy 2 copies and give the other code to a friend. Like, no. That is not an acceptable way to handle that. It's not.
Well,
I don't know if we thought that was a good idea.
And always in the past, like, the whole reason why the retail thing factors in at all is, like, always in the past, I've been able to pre-order my copy just fine. And then when it comes out, there's usually collector's edition copies rotting in the store. So I'll just pick one of those up. And I was going to try and do that and then trade my second collector's edition code to somebody with a normal copy. Because, like, for my second account, I only really need a normal copy because I've already got the digital entitlement for all of the items. But yeah, no, that didn't work out.
You realize that's probably why they massively undershipped it this time.
Probably, because, like, up until about a month ago, there was still a copy of Warlords of Draenor Collector's Edition in a local Walmart. I don't know if it's still there. I haven't been to that one in a while. But, like, it was just sitting on the shelf. I mean, there were tons of copies at like Target and places like that. So yeah, I mean, maybe they just people didn't order it, or the stores didn't order it to be shipped.
Yeah. Hey, shelf space is valuable.
But I'm hoping that, like, I am having a blast right now, and I am hoping that maintains into the end game, because that's ultimately going to be the deciding factor of how long we stay into this. Is there a meaningful experience once you're leveled? Because the zone content is great. Like, this is probably the best designed zone content I've played through in a long time. I mean, it's like this really good balance of scripted content and just stuff for you to go around the world and look at and explore. Because there's like tons of treasure.
There's also the side benefit of they aren't exactly treating you like they maybe went a little overboard with this. They're finally treating you like you can do things. And not you stand by while somebody else does things.
You're suddenly bossing around like major
although somebody's
characters.
Used to do things.
Yeah, you're not really just like riding along second fiddle as someone else does the content. But by the same token, like the artifact quest chain is a little overtuned. Or at least for some classes, it's a little overtuned.
For some classes, it definitely is.
Some of them are actually pretty easy, but like Blood Death Knight, that one was rough. Like, I remember in beta, I died at least a dozen times trying to get through that scenario.
It has one easy one, one reasonable one, and two pretty hard ones. In particular, the Resto and Feral ones are kind of difficult.
Well, and what level are the weapons you can buy in your class hall?
They're actually 740. They're way better than you could, presumably had going in most of the time.
Yeah, so I think that was why the protection and the arms were actually fairly easy, where those weapons were way better than anything I had. Arms was a challenge, but I think I had like 710 weapons going into the arms quest, which I thought were really good, but anyway, we have talked about this at length for a while. Any other thoughts about Legion before we move on to something else?
I have some other stuff I think that I would like to discuss about the Legion story stuff, but okay. I think I would like to save most of it for another time, but I want to touch again on my enduring complaint that like you bounce around between these zones and most of them have like their sort of sub story going on that ties into the bigger world story. And then there's the one zone where the Alliance versus Horde thing is really at the forefront, and it feels awful. Like, I'm so sick of it at this point. Like, I wish it just didn't exist. And I don't know, I haven't seen it from both sides yet. Maybe I'll feel differently when I play it on the faction that I actually enjoy playing, but I'm just really over factions being a thing. I think that's probably what I need to say about that for now.
This expansion storyline feels more one-sided than a lot have in the past. And maybe it's only because I'm seeing the Alliance story, but it definitely feels like they are making someone out to be Snidely Whiplash evil and one side to be heroic. So I'm curious if you see the other side of the equation, what it looks like.
Yeah, I think one of my goals for this week is going to be to do that zone on a Horde character.
Which zone is it?
Stormheim.
Okay. That would be the only one I haven't seen any of yet.
Which is probably why it's not a good idea to discuss it in detail. Okay, so earlier we were talking before the show about the current game of the month, and how you had a bit of discussion about that, at least in getting started in it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like really Risk of Rain in that it restricts your options kind of heavily when you start.
Yeah, there's a lot of like birth options you don't have access to yet.
Yes.
I would point out that that's probably the best. It's
probably for the best in this game.
And here's my recommendation, unless you're really into that sort of stuff, just go with like pick a human, pick something simple and be like, slam, I'm going forward with this. I'm not going to try and mess with my stats at all. Because honestly, like, whew, that game is deep and
You can
intimidating.
dive very far down the hole. I rolled a bulwark as my first character, and it's relatively straightforward, and I feel like that's a good way to start.
My first character was a berserker. Relatively straightforward.
I was also a berserker, and I'm also very straightforward.
Yes, it intentionally keeps you from rolling any of the mage classes when you start. And there are lore reasons for this as well. But yes, it's also very good for gameplay reasons.
This game is actually a lot more fun than I was expecting, so I'm happy about that. I'll be honest, like, I have played a couple of things of NetHack, and that never was something that seemed like fun for me.
Well, like I mentioned last week, it has a relatively modern interface.
Yeah.
And it is not entirely ugly. You can control it with your mouse if you want to.
Well, it has that really nice auto-explore option if you right-click on yourself.
Or just hit Z. Press Z.
This is really
useful.
I figured there must be a key press for it, but I hadn't gone looking for it yet.
But in addition to, it offers you some difficulty options, and my recommendation is to not use the easier difficulty because it actually prevents you from unlocking some things.
That's good to know.
You can play on whatever death mode you like.
Oh, don't go with Explorer, the one that's...
You can go with Explorer.
Is that not the easiest one?
Yes, Explorer is infinite lives.
Yeah.
But in addition to the lives option, there is also a difficulty option.
I don't know if I even noticed that.
It's on the other side.
Ah.
So if you really want to complete the game, you can just do it on Explorer, but I recommend trying to stick with, Adventure?
I went with roguelike because, if I'm going to play a roguelike, I'm going to play a roguelike.
That's fair.
I like
the default gives you...
and have ascended multiple times, so...
Yeah, you're probably okay playing on roguelike. I've never beaten that hack. This game also doesn't have an amulet of Endor.
Yeah.
Or an amulet of life saving. But the default of normal, normal adventure, probably just good to stick with at the start.
But since this is the game of the month, we probably don't want to get into a lot of discussion about it right now, other than tips for getting started.
I'm sure we'll have plenty more to say in the future.
Kodra,
yes.
You said you had gotten into the beginning of Deus Ex. We talked about that a little bit last week.
Yeah. So, I have been playing through the first, major zone, and this game is pretty dense. I really like a game where... I like this game because it allows me to explore and find things when I explore that I could easily miss, and then, makes me feel rewarded for the exploration that I've done. Every single mission I've run across, I can see multiple different paths that support different types of play. And I can try and come up with... I can look for clever end arounds, but if I want to stealth, but stealthing always carries the risk of, if I get caught, I'm suddenly in the middle of a whole bunch of people with guns and will probably die quickly.
Yeah.
Or you could just, shoot your way in if you really wanted to in a traditional fashion, but combat is very tricky in this game. Combat's very hard. You're managing a lot of resources. But I'm really digging this game. I had a lot of fun with Human Revolution, and I'm having a lot of fun with Mankind Divided. I'm having a lot of fun, especially with the side quests, because there are so many side quests to do, and they're all very cool, and I'm having a lot of fun finding the side quests and finding the solutions to side quests.
So, what sort of side quests do you have? I mean, just compared to other games, is it more like an Assassin's Creed game where they're almost mini game or are they full blown quests?
No, they're all full blown quests. So
cool.
The one that I started with is you walk out of your apartment and you're stopped by a police checkpoint, which is hey, you can't go through here. and you like hand over your papers, and it's like, nope, your papers are no good. There's new papers you have to get. But I know a guy who can get you some papers if you really need them, which leads to this person who basically this extortion racket. And like you can shoot your way into the extortion racket, or you can like stealth your way in and like work your way past all of their security systems, or you can like take one guy out and find out that he has the code to the back door on it, or you can hack that back door if your hacking is good enough. It's many paths. It reminds me of Human Revolution and the original Deus Ex, and like that design philosophy is really strong throughout the series. And it's been so long since I've played Invisible War, I can't really tell you if it had that or not. But I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I feel like I had issues with Invisible War due to the story rather than anything else. But I'm like currently on this quest because I went down into the sewers because I was trying to find a different way into this library. And I noticed that there was a manhole cover in front of the library, and so I was like, I wonder if I can get through there from the sewers. But when I went into the sewers, I find this like augmented person who's using his augmented charisma to like control this, to have this cult of personality going on. And I'm trying to find out like how to solve that problem, and it's fun. And meanwhile, I've got like, it's also a Deus Ex game in that you've got lots of conflicted loyalties going on. And in fact, in this game, I feel like they do a lot better job of you have conflicted loyalties right off the bat. And that's also interesting to me.
So do they set up a situation where you doing stuff for this person damages your reputation with a different person?
It's not quite that. It's definitely... I have not noticed, like, reputation systems yet. But I feel like I might be about to find some out. I don't know. How much of the first game do you remember?
Not much. I've started it several times, but never actually made much of a dent in it.
Yeah, it reminds me more of a lot of the quests there, where it was the actions you take in a quest might follow you in ways you didn't anticipate. Like, there was a quest in Deus Ex in, like, the very first level, or maybe where there was a guy harassing this proprietor of a hotel. And, like, you could go in and, like, shoot the guy, or you could go in and, like, deal with it non-lethally. And depending on how you did it, like, the characters in the hotel, like, this proprietor and his daughter would meet you later on in the game with very different stories. And so that's sort of the vibe I'm getting. Like, I imagine some of the characters who I'm meeting and working with in these side quests might show up later on.
Kind of reminds me of, like, how some of the stuff in Mass Effect, like, one little encounter will unlock another encounter, or more so how things carried over between games. To where, like, if you were moving your save file between the games, because you did this thing that seemed inconsequential in one game, may unlock something different in a later game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't happen in these, which was actually a big... I feel a big frustration point of mine is, like, they do the every ending is the true ending thing.
Oh, they're still doing that?
Well, I actually haven't noticed. Like, it honestly feels like it doesn't even matter.
I mean, because that was part of the thing with Invisible War, was just the fact that, you know, apparently all the endings from the original Deus Ex happened. Which
didn't make much sense. Is never the right answer. Just putting that out there.
Yep.
But I'm having a lot of fun. I'm sort of hesitant on the story, like I'll see where I go, but like the gameplay of wandering around and finding new side quests is really fun for me.
I know you've also been playing some Necropolis, right?
I have played a decent amount of Necropolis. So how did my Necropolis playthrough go? Like, the first time I played it, I died almost immediately. The second time I got to like level 4 and then got swarmed and like died because I met a new enemy type. And then this is my third playthrough and I'm sort of like wandering around lost now. I think I've forgotten where I'm supposed to go, and at some point I started going back up, and I'm now looking online at some guides which tells me that was the wrong thing to do, so I kind of need to work my way back down. But I'm currently maxed level, and I kind of feel like the game is too easy. I don't know.
There seemed to be like a significant point where your power was greater than that of the enemies that you fought. Like, I remember that much, and it was around floor 4, 5-ish or so that it felt like I now have really powerful weapons. Like, the thing that I kept using was it was a sword that special attack created a bunch of those like red shards.
Mm-hmm.
And that just felt like that was just super powerful.
So I get lost in this game a lot, but I feel like I understand why people would compare it to Dark Souls, but the combat it's a far cry from Dark Souls combat.
Yeah. Well, and the problem with getting lost is the fact that because it's procedurally generated, a lot of rooms look exactly the same.
Yeah. The other thing is that the game is very samey. Like, bosses would be nice to break things up a bit, because really you're just fighting the same enemy over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, and it felt like when you got a brand new mob type introduced, it was really hard, but then once you learned how to counteract it, it stopped being hard at all. Like, I seemed like every time I died, it was just because I encountered something I didn't really know what to do with. Like, either that or there were occasions where you just flat out got swarmed because you happened to turn the wrong corner at the wrong time, and like an entire room of things will aggro on you at once.
Yeah, I actually, even with that, I never really had much of an issue, just because I'm very familiar with the Dark Souls, like, dodge, 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 run away, run away, run away. Like, if something looks too hard, it's probably best to try and get it to, like, come at you in a single file line, which you can typically do by exploiting running away via and using corners to your advantage.
Yeah. Like, I've not played the Dark Souls that you have, and my instinct is just to stand and attack everything, and the problem with this game that I saw is there's no invulnerability frames.
No.
So if you get swarmed, it will just kill you before you can do anything. Like, if you allow yourself to get completely surrounded, it'll just straight up wreck you because, every single hit will land. There won't be any invulnerability frames. So that part always felt a little unfair, but once I knew that, and I knew I couldn't ever allow myself to get surrounded, I shifted how I was playing, and then once again started running away like you were saying. And you could use corners to your advantage a lot. And like the only time that you really, or at least I got surrounded, was when you'd go into a room where stuff would spawn in, like the guys that come out of the crystals.
Yeah.
Because you don't ever really know how many are going to come out at once.
See, I always thought only 4 came out.
Maybe, I guess 4 is the most that can come out, but I think there's been some situations where I saw that like they came out staggered. So like 2 would come out and then another 2, and those were significantly easier to deal with. Like, I think it's an enjoyable game. It's just a weird game.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but I don't have much else to say about it.
Okay. Do we have anything else we really want to talk about before we kind of wrap things up? Anything else anyone else has been playing?
Nope, don't think so.
Not much here.
Okie doke. Well, this was a fairly WoW heavy show. I think Legion's good, or at least it seems to be so far. I'll be curious to find out as we all hit 110 if that holds true. But anyway, hopefully y'all enjoyed the show, and we will potentially be back next week with the Witness show. I'm hoping.
Hopefully.
Anyway,
Big plan.
good night, folks.
See you.
Good
Good night.
Good night.